I never expected a secret letter from my father to change everything, but that one page held the key to saving my sister's children. My name is Claire Morgan. And the day my sister dropped her 3 children at my doorstep without warning, without remorse, was the day I stopped living for myself. It was a quiet Monday morning in Vermont. I was prepping for a video call with a client, a half-sipped coffee growing cold beside my laptop. The house was silent, save for the occasional creak of wood as the furnace kicked in. I hadn't expected company. I hadn't expected my entire life to change with 3 knocks on the door. I opened it to see Natalie, perfectly styled sunglasses on top of her glossy hair designer luggage behind her. But it wasn't just her. Standing next to her were 3 confused, wide-eyed children, Tyler, age 10, Lila, 7, and Noah, just 4, gripping a stuffed bear that had clearly seen better days. They looked scared, and Natalie, she looked relieved. "Claire, you look amazing," she beamed, brushing past me like this was brunch, not a bombshell. "I just need a teeny favor. I'm going to Europe. A personal reset. You know, soul searching. Can you take the kids for 2 weeks?" Before I could speak, before I could even breathe, she dropped a file folder on the counter. "Here's their school schedules. Lila has a peanut allergy. Tyler plays soccer. Noah likes his nightlight. Thanks, sis. I'll call when I land." She kissed the air, turned on her heel, and disappeared. Just like that. Like she'd handed off dry cleaning. I stood in the doorway for a moment, stunned. The kids shuffled into the living room, unsure if they were welcome. Tyler's jaw was tight. Lila clung to her backpack. Noah stared at me with wide, wary eyes. "She's not coming back in 2 weeks, is she?" Tyler asked, his voice too grown for his age. I wanted to lie, I really did, but I couldn't meet his gaze and pretend. Instead, I said, "Let's get you settled." Inside, my stomach was flipping. I wasn't a mother. I had lost my husband Marcus to cancer 2 years ago. The grief still clung to the walls of this house. I'd only just begun to learn how to be alone in it. And now I had 3 kids who didn't ask to be here. 3 broken hearts dumped on my doorstep. That night, I couldn't sleep. I listened to every creak, every cough down the hall. Tyler tossed in his sleep. Lila cried out once. Noah came crawling into my room and curled up beside me like it was the most natural thing. I lay there with my eyes on the ceiling, the weight of their tiny lives pressing down like a ton of bricks. This wasn't temporary. I could feel it in my bones. Natalie had always been that way, chasing freedom, shirking responsibility, dancing from one escape to another. Our parents adored her. I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who always cleaned up the mess. And now I was about to raise 3 kids I didn't choose. And yet somehow I knew I couldn't let them go. Because the look in Tyler's eyes, that look of quiet, disappointed understanding, it haunted me. If you've ever been left holding someone else's responsibilities while they walked away smiling, drop a like and stay with me. Because this story, it's only just getting started. The first morning was chaos disguised as breakfast. I burned the toast. Tyler refused cereal. Lila cried because I put the wrong color socks in her drawer. Noah spilled orange juice on my laptop keyboard just as I was opening Zoom for a client call. I muted myself and smiled while a 4-year-old yelled, "Bear wants pancakes," in the background. It was like falling into a life I had never prepared for, but I didn't back out. I rearranged my entire calendar, moved meetings to nap time hours, and quickly learned the rhythm of school drop-offs, homework time, peanut-free lunches, and storybooks that always required silly voices. I even had to become a sudden expert in anti-anxiety bedtime techniques because Lila wouldn't sleep unless I sat in the hallway with the light on. Natalie's folder was laughable, just scribbled notes on sticky paper. No passwords, no teachers' names, no medical history beyond Lila allergic, duh. It felt less like a transition and more like an ambush. And still somehow I made it work. But I wasn't thriving, I was surviving. By week 2, I was sleeping in 90-minute intervals and running on caffeine and granola bars. Every night, I promised myself I'd call Natalie and demand answers. But every morning, I'd wake up to a photo from her smiling in Rome, sipping wine in Paris, lounging in the south of Spain with a man who looked like he belonged on a magazine cover. Her messages were breezy. Still finding myself. Met someone amazing. Hope the kids are good. You're the best, Claire. No mention of how the kids were adjusting. No check-in after Noah came down with a fever. No question after Tyler got into a shouting match with the teacher at school. Natalie had vanished, and in her place was this curated version of herself full of wine beaches and spiritual quotes. I hated how jealous I was, how angry, how lonely. I cried in the laundry room more times than I'd admit quietly, with the dryer running to drown out the sound. But then something shifted. Tyler began setting the table without being asked. Lila started leaving her drawings on my desk with "For Aunt Claire" written in bubble letters. And Noah, he began calling me Mommy Claire. The first time he said it, I froze. It wasn't what I wanted, or maybe it was exactly what I needed. He had whispered it while falling asleep on the couch, tiny fingers curled around mine. That night I sat on the back porch, wine glass in hand, and stared at the stars. I thought about Marcus, about how we'd tried for children, about the nursery we never got to paint, about all the things we lost to cancer, and now somehow this noisy, messy, unexpected life had come crashing into mine. It wasn't what I asked for, but it was becoming something I couldn't let go of. These kids weren't burdens. They were people, each carrying heartbreak in tiny backpacks. And every day they handed pieces of themselves to me in trust. A crumpled drawing, a shy smile, a meltdown over forgotten math homework. I had to be strong enough not to drop those pieces. Even if their mother already had. 3 weeks in, Lila nearly died. It started with a cookie. Just one. A neighbor dropped off a batch of homemade treats, smiling sweetly and waving from her porch. I scanned the ingredient list. She rattled off sugar, chocolate chips, flour, but she forgot the walnuts. I didn't know. I didn't think. Lila had said she was hungry after school, and I handed her one before even unzipping her backpack. 10 minutes later, she couldn't breathe. Her lips swelled. Her skin turned blotchy. She was clawing at her throat, eyes wide with panic. Tyler screamed. Noah burst into tears. And I froze. Only for a second, but long enough to hear my own heartbeat thunder through my chest. Then I snapped into action. I grabbed her EpiPen from her school bag. Thank God I had insisted she keep it there, and jammed it into her thigh. She cried out, and I whispered, I'm sorry, I've got you," over and over as I dialed 911 with shaking fingers. At the hospital, after the adrenaline wore off and her breathing evened out, I sat beside her bed while she slept. My hands trembled. I couldn't stop thinking. If I hadn't known about that allergy, if the pen hadn't been in her bag, she would have died in my kitchen. And where was Natalie? Sailing somewhere on the Amalfi Coast, judging by her latest Instagram post. Smiling, champagne in hand, living free, her caption said. She hadn't even checked in. Not once. Later that night I texted her, Lila had an allergic reaction. ER visit. She's okay now. You should know. The read receipt showed she saw it within 3 minutes. No reply. Just a new story post, a picture of her feet in the sand, captioned, "Disconnect to reconnect." I threw my phone across the room. If you've ever felt the weight of someone else's negligence nearly crush you, or if you've had to carry the consequences of choices you never made, share your story below. Because sometimes being the one who shows up means living with the fear that you might not always get it right, but showing up anyway. That moment broke something open in me. The fear, the rage, the grief. I started researching Lila's condition obsessively. I reorganized the pantry, got medical alert bracelets, printed posters about allergens, and stuck them to every cabinet. I even met with her school nurse in person. I wasn't going to let that happen again. And I wasn't going to let Natalie waltz back into their lives like she hadn't been absent during the scariest moment of her daughter's life. The next day, Tyler came into the kitchen while I was labeling snack bins. He looked at me quiet for a moment. "Thanks," he mumbled, "for saving her." I smiled, but I didn't know what to say. He nodded and turned to go, then stopped in the doorway. "She calls you Mom now. Lila. She talks in her sleep. She says, 'Mom says no peanuts.'" Then he walked away, leaving me speechless. I sat down at the kitchen table and just let the tears fall. I wasn't trying to replace anyone, but it seemed slowly I was becoming someone these kids trusted, leaned on, maybe even needed. A month in a manila envelope landed in my mailbox, no return address, just my name in firm black ink. Inside was a typed letter on official legal stationery. The header, law offices of Fisher and Tate. The subject, temporary guardianship authorization. I blinked at it for a full minute before I sat down. Natalie wanted me to sign paperwork making me the official guardian of her children. Just for convenience, the letter claimed. To help with school registration, medical decisions, emergencies. It sounded harmless. But nothing about Natalie ever was. I stared at the form long after the kids had gone to bed. The dishwasher hummed behind me. Tyler had fallen asleep with a book on his chest. Lila had tucked herself in with her bear, clutching a drawing she made for me of our family, apparently. Stick figures. 4 of them. One was clearly me. The caption read, "My mom." I was signing up for something massive. Not just legally, but emotionally, spiritually, practically. I would be responsible for these 3 small lives, not just day to day, but long term. As their mother in everything but name, I stood up, poured a glass of wine, and walked into the living room. I looked up at the mantel where Marcus's photo still sat, my late husband, my best friend, the man I'd dreamed of raising a family with. "What would you do?" I whispered. He didn't answer, of course, but I could hear his voice in my memory, calm, grounding. "You've always known how to love people who need it most." Still, I didn't sign. Not yet. Instead, I called Victoria Bennett, our old estate attorney. She had managed Marcus's end-of-life affairs, and I trusted her with everything. She was sharp, protective, and knew Natalie well enough to raise an eyebrow when I told her the situation. "Don't sign anything," she said. "Let me read it first." 2 days later, she called back with a voice tight with warning. "Claire, I found something." My heart dropped. "It's not just a guardianship form," she continued. "Buried in the fine print, there's a clause waiving your right to contest any future relocation decisions. If you sign this, you're giving Natalie full freedom to take the kids out of the country. Permanently, even if you don't agree." My blood ran cold. "You're saying she's planning to take them to Europe? France, maybe, with this Pierre person." It hit me like a punch. The woman who hadn't called, hadn't checked in, hadn't cared during hospital visits or school events was now trying to secure legal leverage to reclaim the kids just in time for Instagram family photos. I looked at the couch where Noah was curled up watching cartoons. I imagined him sitting alone on a plane being shuttled to a place he didn't know, with a mother he barely remembered. I felt rage rise hot and clean. "She doesn't get to do this," I said. "No," Victoria replied calmly, "and she won't, not if we act now." That night I sat in my car outside the grocery store, hands on the steering wheel, heart hammering. I wasn't ready for this fight, but I wasn't going to back down either. Natalie may have walked away from her children, but I was ready to fight for them. Victoria called me the next morning with urgency in her voice. "I need you to come in, bring the guardianship documents, and Claire, bring an open mind." That's when she told me, "There's a second will." I nearly dropped the phone. Victoria explained that while reviewing Natalie's background and legal moves, she had combed through my father's estate records. Something didn't sit right. And hidden within an archive she had access to as a former co-executor, she discovered a second will my father had written over a decade ago. It was triggered under very specific conditions if Natalie were to abandon her children for more than 3 consecutive months. I sat silently clutching the phone. "He knew," I finally whispered. "He suspected," she said, "and he prepared." The following afternoon, I was in Victoria's office. Leather chairs, heavy oak shelves, the scent of old books and polished wood. She spread out a series of documents across her desk. "This was written the year Tyler was born. Your father was concerned even then." Victoria slid a letter across to me, handwritten, folded, and stained at the corners. I unfolded it, breath shaky. "My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, it means Natalie has done what I feared, chosen herself over her children." His words were deliberate, loving, but clear. He had seen the longing in Natalie's eyes, the restlessness, the desire to escape, and he feared this day might come. So he left behind protections. A trust fund to provide for the children. Transfer of Natalie's house to me if she disappeared longer than 90 days. Money for their education. A modest stipend for Natalie on the condition she proved over a full year a sincere commitment to her children. I read it 3 times, my hands trembled. He had seen this coming. He had trusted me, the sister in the background, the one without children, the one who always picked up the pieces. Tears blurred the words, but I read them aloud softly. "You have always been the strong one, Claire. Where Natalie seeks what the world can give her, you seek what you can give to the world. These children deserve love, consistency, and someone who sees them. I know you will." I pressed my hand to my chest, grounding myself. He didn't just leave me money, he left me a mission. Victoria let me sit with the letter for a while, giving me space to feel it. Then she cleared her throat and laid down the final document. "The house is now legally yours, and with this, we can petition the court for permanent guardianship. Based on the abandonment clause, you have every legal ground to proceed." I looked up at her, still half frozen in disbelief. "And Natalie, she'll fight, probably dirty. But Claire, your father laid this path out for you, and the law is on your side." That evening, I tucked the kids in with new eyes. Tyler, already taller than I remembered, mumbled goodnight from behind a book. Lila asked for an extra hug. Noah fell asleep in my arms. And I thought maybe this wasn't the family I planned. But it was the family I'd been chosen to protect. The more I stepped into this role, unofficial yet all-consuming, the more I saw what Natalie had missed. Not just milestones or doctor visits, but moments. The real stuff. Tyler had a temper. Not because he was difficult, but because he was scared. He was 10 years old and already bracing for disappointment. Every no felt like a personal betrayal. Every change in schedule was met with panic disguised as rage. Lila chased perfection like it was survival. Her homework had to be neat, her shoes matched always. Any tiny mistake reduced her to tears. When I asked her why she got so upset, she whispered, "If I'm perfect, maybe she'll come back." And Noah? Sweet Noah. He didn't speak much, but he clung to me like gravity. He followed me from room to room, slept with the door open, needed to know exactly where I was at all times. He was 4, but had already learned that love could vanish overnight. They weren't resilient like people love to say about kids. They were grieving. They were survivors of a quiet kind of abandonment, the kind that leaves no bruises but hollows you out from the inside. So I made a promise to myself, a silent one. Every time they looked to the door wondering if Natalie would walk back through it, I would already be there. Every lunch packed, every recital attended, every "I'm scared" whispered in the dark, I would be there. Consistent, unflinching. I couldn't undo what Natalie did, but I could show them what it felt like to be seen. One night, Tyler asked if he could join a local soccer league. He hadn't played since Natalie left. I told him yes before he even finished the sentence. At his first game, he missed 2 goals and nearly kicked the ball into his own net. But when he looked up and saw me waving from the sidelines, he grinned. Really grinned, for the first time in weeks. Lila started taping her art to the fridge again without fear of judgment. Noah stopped asking if I'd disappear like Mommy. We were healing, bit by bit. And then Natalie called. Not a text, not a photo, an actual video call. Her face filled the screen. Behind her sparkled the Eiffel Tower at night. She didn't say hi. She said, "Pierre and I are engaged. We're planning the wedding in Paris. I want the kids to come." My stomach dropped. "No," I said softly but firmly. "They're not going anywhere." Her smile faltered. "Claire, they'll love it. It's Paris. They need stability. You gave that up when you left them without a word." She narrowed her eyes. "Are you saying you won't let me see my children?" "I'm saying we need to talk about Dad's second will." The silence on her end was ice cold. If you've ever had to speak a truth that shattered the illusion someone else lived in, leave a comment below. What was your moment? When did you finally say enough? I'm curious who else has stood in that fire and refused to be burned. Natalie's lips curled into something between a smirk and a threat. "You're jealous," she spat. "You couldn't have kids of your own, so now you're trying to steal mine." The words hit me like a slap. She meant to wound, and for a moment she succeeded. But I had spent the last 3 months earning a title she had long since forfeited. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just said the courts will decide. But I will do everything I can to make sure these kids never feel disposable again. Then I ended the call. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of Natalie. I wasn't prepared for how fast Natalie would retaliate. Within days, my phone exploded with calls and messages from my parents. Their voices cracked between tears and accusations. "How could you do this to your sister?" Mom sobbed. "We're family." "Yes, we are," I said calmly. "That's why I'm protecting the children." But it didn't stop there. Old family friends suddenly emerged from the shadows, taking sides. Some called them flying monkeys and Natalie's drama enablers, who spread rumors and pressured me to back down. Even Aunt Linda, who hadn't visited the kids once in 6 months, started sending angry texts about my coldness and destroying family bonds. I stood firm. Because this wasn't about family loyalty anymore. It was about justice. About making sure 3 vulnerable children had a chance at a normal, loving life. 3 days after that, I received official notice that Natalie had filed for emergency custody. She claimed I had manipulated the situation, that I was an unstable widow obsessed with stealing her children. Her lawyer painted me as a villain in a courtroom drama that I never auditioned for. But Victoria was unshaken. "This is good," she told me during one of our late-night calls. "She's showing her true colors. Every move she makes strengthens our case." Preparing for court was the hardest thing I'd ever done. The day of the hearing arrived under gray skies and rolling thunder, an ominous backdrop for what awaited. I dressed carefully in a conservative navy blue suit, trying to radiate stability and competence. Natalie arrived next, dripping with designer clothes and false confidence, Pierre by her side. But not once did she glance at her children waiting with my friend Anne in the courthouse hallway. The judge, a stern but fair woman named Harrison, reviewed all the documents meticulously. Natalie's lawyer went first, spinning a story of a young mother overwhelmed who simply needed time and trusted her sister to care for her children. He called me an opportunist, someone exploiting family drama for custody. Then Victoria presented our evidence. Photos of Natalie partying across Europe, ignoring calls from her children. Missed doctor appointments and school conferences. Statements from teachers praising the children's improvement under my care. And finally, the letter and will from my father. Your Honor, Victoria said firmly, this case isn't about denying Natalie access to her children. It's about providing these 3 young people the stability and love they deserve. Miss Claire Morgan has been that home. Their own grandfather foresaw this situation and provided for it legally. The judge asked to speak privately with the children. When they returned, Tyler stood taller, Lila wiped away tears but looked resolute, and Noah clutched his dinosaur tightly. The judge's decision was clear. Temporary custody would remain with me while a full evaluation was conducted. Natalie would have supervised visitation rights if she chose to exercise them. Natalie exploded. They're my children, I gave birth to them. Judge Harrison's voice cut through her outburst like a blade. Giving birth is biology. Parenting is action. From the evidence, you excelled at the former and abdicated the latter. If you wish to contest permanent custody, demonstrate genuine commitment starting now. Natalie stormed out, Pierre trailing behind her. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, a new peace settled in their eyes. They knew they were staying home. The nights after the court ruling were quieter than I expected. For the first time in months, I watched Tyler sleep without worrying about what tomorrow would bring. Lila no longer woke up screaming in the middle of the night, clutching her drawings like a lifeline. Noah's laughter, once rare and tentative, filled the rooms again. But as much as the kids were healing, so was I. The weight of responsibility was immense. I wasn't just their guardian, I was their anchor in a storm they never asked to sail. One evening, as I sat on the porch sipping a glass of cold iced tea, my phone buzzed. A message from Natalie. Claire, this isn't over. I stared at those words, a mix of exhaustion and defiance washing over me. No, it wasn't over. It never would be. She had lost the temporary custody battle, but I knew this was just the opening salvo. Her Instagram exploded with posts portraying herself as a victim of family betrayal. Carefully curated images of motherly devotion from afar, throwbacks of happier times, and heartfelt captions about missing her children. But the truth was something else. She missed her first supervised visit, claiming travel delays. The second visit lasted only 15 minutes before she abandoned the session to snap selfies for her social media story. By the third visit, only Tyler showed up, leaving early after she began discussing a new life for them in Paris. Tyler confided in me later, his voice filled with quiet determination. I don't want a new life. I want our life here with you. It was the clearest moment of truth I'd seen from any of them. The custody evaluation process was thorough and grueling. Court-appointed psychologist Dr. Martinez spent hours with the kids, observing us, interviewing me, and Natalie reviewing all evidence. One session stayed with me. Sophie, proud yet cautious, showed Dr. Martinez her art wall drawings, paintings, school projects I had carefully preserved. Mom, meaning Claire, comes to every art show. She even took time off work when I was scared to present my project. The psychologist asked gently, "And your other mom?" Sophie's face fell. She came once last year, but posted pictures from a party in Milan instead. Those moments broke my heart but strengthened my resolve. These kids deserved better than to be side characters in their mother's quest for herself. Meanwhile, daily life began to normalize. Tyler joined a competitive soccer team. His anger softened with every successful game. Lila's art teacher recommended her for a gifted program. Noah started kindergarten proud in his bright blue backpack. They were growing, thriving. But Natalie wasn't done fighting. Her lawyers filed motion after motion. They accused me of alienating the children, a claim disproven by visitation records showing her frequent absences. She argued moving the kids to France would provide cultural enrichment, but Tyler's therapist testified about the anxiety it caused him. Financial battles ensued. Natalie burned through her trust fund monthly, unable to maintain her lifestyle in Europe. She tried to contest the trust, claiming our father wasn't of sound mind when he created it. Victoria countered quickly, producing videos of Dad explaining his decisions, his wisdom echoing beyond time. Dad always said parenthood isn't about ease. It's about showing up even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. That truth kept me grounded. 3 months into the evaluation process, Natalie made a critical mistake. She showed up unannounced at the kids' school, trying to take them to lunch without authorization. The school's security protocols, carefully updated after months of legal battles, stopped her from causing harm. But the incident left its mark, not just on the case, on the kids. That night, curled up in my bed with a hot chocolate in hand, Lila whispered, You're the only one who remembers my nut allergy. Her voice was small, but her words carried the weight of months of neglect. Max started having nightmares again, trembling in the dark. Tyler's grades dipped temporarily, weighed down by the stress and uncertainty. Sophie developed stomach aches before supervised visits. The trauma was real. Dr. Anderson, our family therapist, recommended we start family counseling. It's okay to love your birth mom, she told the kids. And it's okay to be angry at her choices. And it's okay to love Claire, too. Your hearts are big enough for complicated feelings. I held Sophie close as she cried out years of hurt and confusion. Those sessions were painful but healing. One counseling session stands out. Natalie attended but spent most of the time on her phone making excuses for her absence. I just want them to have what I never had, she said quietly. Dr. Anderson asked the kids directly, what do you want? Tyler spoke first, I want to stay on my soccer team. I want to stay with Claire. Lila followed, I want to keep taking art classes. And I want Max to sleep without crying. Max climbed into my lap, holding me tight. For the first time, Tyler called me Mom in front of Natalie. Natalie's face went pale. Before she could reply, Sophie said softly, I want Mom Claire to keep making everything okay. The truth hung heavy in the room. Natalie left early that day. 5 months into the process, Pierre broke off their engagement. Natalie's social media went dark briefly before exploding with posts about betrayal and fresh starts. Then one rainy evening, she showed up at my door, less polished than before. Makeup streaked down her cheeks. I've lost everything, she said. Pierre, my life in Paris, and the kids hate me. I didn't invite her in. They don't hate you, I said. They're hurt. How do you do it? She asked, voice trembling. How do you manage it all? I told her it's not easy, but they're worth every moment. For the first time, I saw the real Natalie, flawed, scared, and human. I'm not a good mother, am I? No, I answered gently. You're not a present mother, but you can change that if you want. She left without entering, but something shifted. The next week, her lawyer contacted Victoria about a settlement. We negotiated terms I would keep primary custody. Natalie would have supervised visitation increasing if she proved consistency. She'd attend therapy alone and with the kids. Most importantly, she agreed to drop plans of moving the children to France. In exchange, she received a modest trust to rebuild her life. The day we signed the agreement, Natalie looked both defeated and relieved. Take better care of them than I did, she said quietly. I already do, I replied. But they'll always know you love them in your own way. If you've ever had to carry a burden no one asked you for, or fight for love that others gave up on, share your experience below. Your story matters. The days following the settlement brought a quiet new rhythm to our home. Tyler was no longer just a boy struggling with anger. He was a young athlete finding his stride. His soccer coach even praised his improved teamwork and focus. I watched as he celebrated a goal during practice, the glow of pride lighting up his face. Lila blossomed in her art classes. The once timid girl now proudly hung her paintings in the local gallery's youth exhibition. She told me she felt brave enough to try new things, even when they didn't turn out perfect. Noah, still my little shadow, started sleeping through the night more often. His laughter became a familiar melody in the mornings, chasing away the echoes of uncertainty that once haunted the halls. This family, my family, was growing stronger. We had survived chaos and heartbreak, betrayal, and legal battles. But healing wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about building something new in its place. I often thought about my late husband, Marcus. I imagined him watching us from somewhere peaceful, a quiet smile on his face. He had wanted this family for me, wanted me to be whole again. And somehow, despite everything, we were finding that wholeness together. Parenthood was never about biology for me. It was about presence, consistency, and unwavering love. Every night after tucking the kids into bed, I would sit on the porch, sipping tea and letting the silence wrap around me like a balm. The weight of responsibility was still there, but now it was balanced with hope. Hope that these children, despite the odds stacked against them, would grow into confident, compassionate adults. But Natalie's journey was far from over. She had moved back to Boston and found work teaching yoga, a far cry from her jet-setting European lifestyle. She attended therapy consistently, trying to repair what she had broken. She made it to Tyler's games, remembered Lila's art show dates, and sent Noah thoughtful birthday presents. One afternoon, Sophie called out from the deck, Mom, and guess what? Emma's here. The feeling was strange, mixed with hesitation and cautious optimism. Natalie arrived carrying a homemade cake, slightly lopsided but baked with care. The kids gathered around, their smiles real and warm. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension and old wounds resurfacing. But it was a start. The kids showed her the memory book we'd made during therapy, a collection of photos, drawings, and mementos. Remember when Mom taught us to make snow angels? Noah asked, pointing to a winter photo. Which Mom? Natalie asked, voice tentative. Sarah, Mom, he replied easily. You took us sledding last month. That was fun too. In those moments, I realized family wasn't about perfection or past mistakes. It was about choosing to try again and again. The more time passed, the clearer it became that healing wasn't a straight path. It was a winding road filled with good days, setbacks, and moments of unexpected joy. I remember one afternoon sitting on the porch watching Tyler kick a soccer ball with his friends. His laughter was lighter than I'd heard in months. I caught his eye and smiled, and for a moment all the fear and anger melted away, replaced by a spark of hope. That hope was contagious. Inside, Lila was painting in her room, the walls adorned with colorful creations she was proud to call hers. Her confidence grew with every brushstroke, and I could see the girl who once feared failure slowly emerging, ready to take on the world. Noah, too, was thriving. He ran around the backyard with the boundless energy only a 4-year-old can possess. Sometimes I'd find him curled up on the couch, softly humming a tune, or clutching his favorite dinosaur safe and content in the knowledge that he belonged. Watching them, I was reminded daily that family wasn't about biology or perfect circumstances. It was about the love, commitment, and presence we gave each other, especially when it was hard. Natalie was no longer just the absentee mother. She had started showing up. Not perfectly, not consistently, but showing up nonetheless. She moved back to Boston, took a job teaching yoga, a career shift from the glamorous life she once pursued. Therapy became a part of her routine both individually and with the children. She came to Tyler's games when invited, and her phone reminded her of Lila's art shows and Noah's birthdays. It wasn't the fairy tale comeback, but it was real. One evening, Sophie called out to me from the deck. Mom, Emma's here. The door opened and Natalie stepped inside carrying a cake that was slightly lopsided but clearly made with love. The kids gathered around her, their initial hesitations softening into smiles. The room was filled with laughter, stories, and the kind of messy, imperfect moments that make a family. It was clear this new chapter wouldn't be easy. The past still cast long shadows, and there were days when old wounds would resurface. But what mattered most was the willingness to navigate those shadows together, to choose family, even when it felt complicated. Later that night, after Natalie left and the kids were asleep, I found myself holding the letter my father had written years ago. The worn paper felt like a lifeline, a reminder that love isn't always about perfect beginnings, but about who chooses to stay. My phone buzzed softly, a text from Natalie. Thank you for letting me be there today, and thank you for being what they needed when I couldn't. I stared at the message. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. As I looked out at the yard, fairy lights twinkling against the night sky, glitter scattered like fallen stars from our family celebration, I felt a deep sense of peace. Our family wasn't what I had imagined growing up. It wasn't perfect or traditional, but it was ours, built on resilience, love, and the courage to keep trying. And for tonight, that was enough. The months that followed brought a fragile peace, but with it came new challenges, mostly emotional, sometimes legal. Natalie was trying. Not perfectly, not consistently, but enough to show she was serious about rebuilding her relationship with the kids. She attended therapy sessions regularly, both alone and with the children. She showed up at soccer games and school events. She sent thoughtful gifts on birthdays and holidays, little things but meaningful. At the same time, she was still battling her own demons, her restless spirit, her longing for freedom, and the guilt that weighed heavily on her shoulders. It was clear she struggled to balance her desires with her responsibilities. The kids, too, were adjusting to this complicated new dynamic. Sometimes they would retreat, unsure how to respond to the mother who had once abandoned them, but now sought to be part of their lives again. Other times, they would eagerly share moments from their day, hoping to include her in their world. One evening, Sophie came to me quietly. Mom, she said, I think I'm ready to forgive her. It wasn't a sudden breakthrough. It was a process, a journey they all had to make in their own time. I held her close and whispered, That's okay, sweetheart. Forgiveness takes courage, and we'll take it one day at a time. Tyler was growing into a young man who understood more than he let on. His anger had softened, replaced by a quiet determination to protect his little siblings and himself. He had begun to speak openly about his feelings, something he hadn't done before. Noah, the youngest, blossomed with each passing day. His laughter filled the house, and his trust in me was unwavering. He had found a safe harbor in this chaotic world. Yet the legal battles were far from over. Natalie's lawyers continued to push back filing motions and attempting to undermine the custody arrangement. They questioned my stability, my motives, even the validity of the trust fund. Each motion was more desperate than the last. But Victoria was relentless. She defended us with precision and passion. She produced videos of Dad explaining his intentions. She presented detailed evidence of Natalie's past neglect and the children's progress under my care. With each court appearance, the truth became clearer. Parenting is not just about biology, it's about showing up every day, no matter how hard. During this turbulent time, the children's therapist recommended more intensive family therapy. The sessions were emotional and raw. The kids expressed love, anger, confusion, and hope all tangled together. One session particularly stood out. Natalie attended, but she was distracted, scrolling on her phone, barely engaging. When asked what she wanted for her children, she replied, "I want them to have everything I didn't." Dr. Anderson gently asked the kids what they wanted. Tyler said firmly, "I want to stay with Mom Claire. She's here." Lila added, "I want to keep painting and have Mom Claire help me." Noah hugged me and whispered, "I want Mom Claire." Those words, spoken in a small therapy room, echoed louder than any court ruling. They were a reminder that family is not just about blood, but about who chooses to love and stay. The months following that therapy session were a turning point, not just for the kids, but for Natalie herself. She began to show up differently, no longer the distant mother chasing a glamorous life, but a woman willing to face her mistakes and fight for her children in a new way. She moved into a modest apartment in Boston, a far cry from the penthouses and European escapades she once enjoyed. She took a job teaching yoga at a local studio, grounding herself in mindfulness and discipline. Her presence became more consistent, not perfect, but real. The kids noticed the change too. Tyler started warming up to her slowly, even inviting her to his soccer games, where she'd cheer from the sidelines, a proud yet humble spectator. Lila began talking about her mom again without the usual sadness or anger. She painted pictures for her and saved little notes in her backpack. Noah, though youngest, seemed to sense the shift in the air. He would ask if Mommy Emma would be coming to dinner, and I would say, "She's trying, sweetie." And sometimes that was enough. One afternoon, the kids and I were decorating the backyard for what we called our familyversary, the day the court finalized my custody. It was a makeshift celebration filled with fairy lights, glitter, and laughter. Tyler hung string lights in the trees, his hands steady and sure. Lila arranged hand-painted welcome signs, smiling proudly at her handiwork. Noah, ever the enthusiast, spread far too much glitter on everything he touched, his giggles infectious. Then, just as the sun began to set, Natalie arrived. Not polished or pristine, but genuine. She carried a homemade cake, lopsided imperfect, but made with love. The kids ran to greet her. For the first time in a long while, the house felt whole again. The evening was filled with pizza stories and shared memories. The kids proudly showed Natalie their memory book, a project we'd started in therapy. Photos of soccer trophies, art shows, and birthdays filled its pages. "Remember when Mom taught us to make snow angels?" Noah asked, pointing to a winter photo. "Which Mom?" Natalie asked cautiously. "Sarah, Mom," he replied effortlessly. "You took us sledding last month. That was fun, too." Natalie smiled softly, the weight of the past lifting just a little. It wasn't perfect. There were still days clouded by tension and awkwardness. But it was progress. Slow, messy, beautiful progress. A family learning to heal together. After Natalie left that evening and the kids were tucked into bed, I found myself sitting alone on the back porch, holding the worn letter my father had written years ago. The paper was creased from being folded and unfolded countless times during difficult moments, but it still carried the weight of his wisdom. I traced the inked words with my finger, reading aloud softly to the night. "Love isn't always about biology. Sometimes it's about who steps up when stepping away would be easier." His words had become my anchor through all the chaos, a reminder that family is defined by commitment and love, not just genetics. As I looked out into the yard, the soft glow of fairy lights flickered like stars scattered across the darkness. The remnants of glitter from our familyversary celebration sparkled faintly on the grass, a symbol of the joy and healing we had begun to build together. Despite the wounds and the battles, despite the moments of doubt and exhaustion, we had come this far. The walls of our home, once silent and heavy with grief, now echoed with laughter and chatter. Photographs of birthdays, school events, and ordinary moments filled the rooms, transforming them into a gallery of memories stitched together by love. On the mantel sat Tyler's soccer trophy, gleaming beside Lila's art awards and Noah's cherished dinosaur collection. Each one told a story of resilience and growth, a testament to the power of presence and care. And there near the family photos hung the picture of Marcus, my late husband, whose quiet strength still seemed to watch over us. Sometimes when the house was still, I imagined him exchanging knowing glances with my father, two men who had charted a path of love and protection across generations. On the kitchen counter, I found the family cards the kids had made for me. Tyler's read, "Thanks for being the mom who shows up." Lila's was decorated with hearts and the words, "You made us a real family." Noah's drawing was simple, a picture of all of us holding hands with the message, "Love you forever, Mommy." The simple words carried worlds of meaning. I whispered into the quiet Dad was right. This isn't the path I expected, but it's ours. The story we were writing was one of loss and love, of choices, and chances of a family built not from obligation, but from courage and commitment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and moments to navigate. But tonight, under the twinkling lights and scattered glitter, we were simply home. And that was everything. The next morning dawned bright and clear, but the battle wasn't over. Natalie sent a text that morning, brief but heavy with implication. This isn't over. She was right. It wasn't. The emotional war between us had only just begun. But the children, my children, now slept peacefully in their beds, finally feeling safe in a home built by love and resilience. Their trust in me had grown, and I vowed silently to never betray it. Our family story was far from perfect. There would be hard days, tears, moments when old wounds reopened and new challenges emerged. But through it all, I learned that family isn't about perfection, it's about commitment. About showing up when it's easiest to walk away, about choosing love every single day. Natalie's fight spilled onto social media, a campaign of carefully curated heartbreak and accusations against me. She painted herself as the victim, a mother torn from her children by a cold-hearted sister. Her followers sent messages, many of them filled with judgment and anger. But for every voice that questioned me, there were more who believed in what I was doing, who understood that parenting is about more than biology, that love is action, not just words. I wasn't doing this for the approval of strangers or even family members who had turned their backs. I was doing it for Tyler, Lila, and Noah, for their futures, their happiness, their right to grow up feeling loved and seen. That night, after tucking them in, I sat on the porch and looked up at the stars. I whispered into the darkness, I hope I'm doing right by them. My phone buzzed with a message from Natalie. Thank you for letting me be there today, and thank you for being what they needed when I couldn't. I hesitated, then replied simply, this isn't about winning or losing anymore. It's about 3 children who deserve better than being pawns in a game they never asked to play. The road ahead would be long, and the real work of healing had only just begun. But for the first time, we had solid ground to build on. The truth I've come to live by is this. Love is not always easy. Love is not always convenient. But love is always worth fighting for. If you believe in the power of family, chosen or otherwise, and the courage it takes to protect those you love, I invite you to join this journey. Share your story, your strength, your hope in the comments below. Together, we build a community where love and resilience triumph over pain and abandonment. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of our story. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to keep showing up. As the night settles softly around the house, I sit alone on the porch, reflecting on the journey that brought us here. The struggles, the battles, the heartbreaks, they all weave together into the tapestry of our family's story. It's a story unlike any I imagined, but one that has taught me the true meaning of love and resilience. The quiet hum of the neighborhood wraps around me, and I think of the children tucked safely inside Tyler, dreaming of soccer games. Lila envisioning her next painting, Noah clutching his beloved dinosaur, finally at peace. Their laughter and hope fill the space where pain once lingered. I realize that family is not simply defined by blood or biology. It is forged in the daily acts of care, the moments of sacrifice, and the unwavering presence when it matters most. It is about choosing to stand firm, even when the path is uncertain and the weight feels unbearable. In this imperfect family, love is the foundation. It is messy, complicated, sometimes painful, but always worth the fight. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow, and moments to cherish. We will face them together one day at a time. And as the stars twinkle above, I feel a profound gratitude for the strength we've found, the bonds we've rebuilt, and the family we've chosen to be. This is not just a story of loss or hardship. It is a story of hope, of courage, of the unbreakable spirit of those who refuse to give up on love. So tonight, as I turn off the porch light and check once more on the children sleeping soundly, I whisper a promise into the quiet. No matter what comes next, I will be here. For them, for us, for the family we have become. Because sometimes the greatest love is the love you choose to give every single day.